Hello, everyone who just arrived. We will be starting in a couple of minutes, just waiting. Here is my co-trainer, co-presenter to come in. Just a few reminders. This session is recorded and we'll send you the recording right after it's over. So if you miss a tiny bit, don't worry, you'll have access to that afterwards. You also have access to the slide. They're available on the left hand in handouts. You can download them. And again, the questions that you have during during the webinar will be please put them in the questions section, and we'll try our best to answer that while we're discussing with Laurent on the webinar. So I think it's time to start. We'll start a little bit slowly. That's fine. So welcome again. Today we'll be talking about how to optimize the ROI of your consulting spend. And to that effect, today I have the great pleasure to have my co-founder, Laurent Thomas, who will be discussing with me all on those different levers and on the ROI and on consulting. Welcome, Laurent. Thank you for joining.
Hello, Helene. Hi, everyone.
Okay. I'm trying to get to this. Yes. Awesome. So again, this is us. Laurent is so I said he's my co-founder, but he's also an expert in thought leadership and management, and we'll be talking about that. And for myself, I'm Helene Laffitte. For those who don't know me, I'm the CEO of Consulting Quest, and I work specifically on consulting sourcing and a knowledge of the consulting market. So I chose that. I won't spend too much time on that slide. You'll understand why I chose a slide about investment in that while we're talking about the consulting spend and the ROI. But a lot of what we say today has to do with investing and how to manage in consulting as an investment. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I suggest we dive into what will be the kind of the core content of the webinar today. So we'll talk first about why it's important to optimize the ROI, even for the consulting category. We will discuss also about the dilemma in which the consulting users are put. And then once we got established all this, we can go to the 6 levers to maximize the ROI of your consulting spend. We spend a little time on that, and each one of those levers, what results to expect if you decide to use those levers to maximize your ROI, and how to get started. And we give you also a few pointers and access to our toolbox. So that, of course, we have a question and answer section at the end. But again, if you have questions while we're discussing those topics, don't hesitate to put them into the question section, and we'll do our best to answer that while we go. Okay? Well, let's get started then. So that's something that we talk a lot. And if you're familiar with our work and the podcast that we have, you'll see that we talk a lot about value and return on investment. And that's why I wanted to start today with, making sure we all understand why ROI matters even from consulting. So Laurent, I leave you with that here. All right.
So indeed, when
we can't hear you.
You can't hear me. You can't? No, come on. My mic is on.
Is it just me? Okay, so it's just me.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Then go ahead. Sorry.
You have muted me, Helene. Okay, that's so indeed. When we're discussing about consulting with Helene, one reflection we had is that when we are working in a company on managing investments, be it for innovation, be it for CapEx, be it for new products, we all manage project portfolios. But I've rarely seen consulting managed as a portfolio. Indeed, it happens that most kind of departments end up with a consulting budget that they spend as they see fit. And we always use to manage the portfolio very sophisticated criteria, the payback, the return on investment, the strategic fit, the risk level. There is, in my view, absolutely no reason to manage consulting differently. Consulting is a strategic weapon that you can use to accelerate your strategy, bring higher returns. And in order to know where to invest and allocate your money, you need to have a set of criteria and you need to manage some portfolio and probably not decentralize it as a convenience budget. So I don't know, I raise my hand to tell you to move the slides, Helene, if you cannot hear me.
It's done.
Okay,
move
to the next one.
I can hear you now. That was me. That was all me.
So when we speak about ROI, just a quick definition, we speak about the return, which is indeed the impact, because sometimes the return is monetary, sometimes the return is an enabler, sometimes the return will be to make something happen. So it's not always financial, but you have the impact, and this impact has a cost. So what you want to maximize your ROI is to maximize your impact and minimize your cost. But sometimes having high cost that give you a much higher impact is also a good idea. So it's all about optimizing this trade-off. And a simple way to look at this is to say, okay, if you look at the matrix where you would look at, on one hand, the full ROI potential of your project in an ideal world, if everything was going according to plan, you were using the right consultants at the right price, and you are delivering the value of your project, and you map in the other direction the realized potential. And maybe we should flip it. I don't know if it's the right presentation for the matrix, because usually the outputs are vertical and the inputs are horizontal. I just realized this now, sorry guys. But you have 4 buckets. You have a first bucket where you had a small ROI potential in the first place, and you realized it with a small return. And the question here is, why did we invest? And when we analyze with Helene portfolios from large firms that are spending 50 to 100 million in consulting, guess what? We find a tail, and we find projects that sometimes represent up to 20% of the business that should not have been invested in the first place, or duplicate projects, or these kind of things. Then you have some situations where you had a good potential, but you did not materialize it. And then you need to understand what went wrong. Maybe you over-invested in your cost, or you did not deliver the impact by lack of project management or governance or something, but something definitely went wrong. And you have the situation where you had a good potential, you delivered it, well done. And you have the awkward situation that probably does not happen very often, where you had a small potential and you delivered more than the small potential, and then congrats. But those are the 4 situations that we will probably discuss in the next couple of minutes. Helene, back to you.
Yeah, so what we see, and Laurent mentioned it already a little bit in saying, when we see the portfolio of large companies, what we see is that there are many reasons why companies are not optimizing their ROI. It doesn't come only from one thing. So it might be working on the wrong project. That's exactly what we're mentioning in when you work on project with small ROI and where the realized ROI is small, then why did we invest there? But they also can come from overpaying, not working with the right consultants on the right projects, and also failing to capture the full potential of that project. And here we're not talking about before. So we're not talking about procurement per se. We're talking about the phases just after, which is managing the projects up to the end to make sure that you don't leave the consultant do everything. And because that's the best way to fail a project. Mm-hmm. So that's what we see as a result.
And coming back to the chart we were showing earlier, indeed, we are talking about the red box, where we were wondering why we had invested in the first place. So that's the working on the wrong projects part. And then why we did not capture the full potential, either by overpaying or by failing to capture the full potential. Of course, if you are anyway delivering the potential, or delivering even better than the potential, this is probably not something we'll address today.
So let's now talk about what it means for the consulting user. So one of the things that we see is that consulting is an unusual category for procurements, let's say like that. First, it's still a relationship-based business, and it will remain as even if we see things about AI replacing consultants. I think there's a long time before that really happens. But I truly think that there are some part of consulting that cannot be replaced by AI or machines or software. So that's one thing, is that it's a relationship business, is based on trust in particular. So that's one thing. The second thing is that there is no standardized metrics or performance measure in this industry. And that's quite unusual, because many industries have developed some common measure of the expected outcome, or what is performance, or what is the quality of service, things like that. But that does not really exist in consulting. Some countries, some organizations have tried to do that, but that's not shared globally. And the last part is that asymmetrical information places users in a position of weakness. So what do I mean by that? It means that because it's complex, because it's diverse, the market is scattered, the type of project that can be launched by a given organization is very diverse. There are many types of projects that we can launch, and one individual can not necessarily have a deep knowledge of everything that can be done and all the markets and all the consulting from in front of that. It means that the user of the buyer, when he's facing a consultant, does not always have all the cards in hand to be at the same level of knowledge. Sorry.
A good example you have, if you make a parallel, is you buy a car every 3 years on average, and the guy that's selling the car to you is selling 5 cars per day. And I'm not saying that consultants are all the kind of second-hand car sales guys. That's not what I meant, especially as I spent 15 years in consulting, so I would not dare to say that. But if you take the example of a post-merger integration, the cost will be 20 to 40 million if you work with a tier 1 consulting firm. You negotiate that when you have a merger. So even in very dynamic companies, it's at best every 2 years, 3 years. You don't have a PMI, a significant one, to manage every year, because you would not, even from a regulation standpoint, clear all the hurdles in due time. But the team you have in front of you is selling a PMI every time they are on a new project, I would say on a monthly basis, on a 6 months basis. It depends on the partner. They tend to have 4 or 5 partner projects running in parallel, so they must be selling a PMI at least 3 times a year. So you compare. You see one every 3 years. They see at least 3 to 4 per year. That's 12 times the frequency.
Absolutely. And to that, as a result, there's time to be really kind of that learning curve and getting to know that. But a lot of companies have turnover that does not allow to capitalize that information and master really consulting procurement. So another thing is that companies don't always buy properly. And that comes from many reasons. The first one is decentralized budget. So we said that a little bit before. Decentralized budget, and also renewed from year to year without really taking into account what's happening in the company. In our experience, a company that is going through a transformation will spend much more than a company that is at the end of a transformation or in between. So, and that makes sense then, that the consulting budget goes up and down depending on where you are in your journey and what is in front of you. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is that on the other side also is that some companies have an excessive focus on cost reduction, and they don't see the big picture. So they're focused on cost reduction, and they don't consider the strategic aspect of consulting and how it can advance their strategy. And they might reduce drastically what they do with consulting to the point that they don't really capture the value anymore. and that can be devastating in terms of impact and advancement of the strategy. And the last part is sometimes there is a lack of alignment between what is your strategy and how you allocate your resources to advance your strategy. And obviously consulting is one of those resources, and some companies don't make that work together, and therefore they spend money, and a lot of money in some cases, on projects that are not really higher priorities to advance the strategy, and that can be a problem as well.
The first step is to make sure that they know how much they are spending. It's not always the case.
Yes, that's right.
And once they know how much they are spending, to do what? And then you can compare what they're actually spending their money for, and what are the strategic priorities, and whether there is an alignment that would make sense and that would bring a better returns.
And I think that comes also from the place that consulting, and it's not specific to consulting per se, it's many intangible services are in the same category with, and most of the professional services actually, is that there are specificities in how you buy them. And even if the procurement best practices apply indeed to that category, it still has to be done in a certain way to really get not only an impact on the cost, but also to keep the value and impact part at the level you expect. So this is why the complexity is. So there are a lot of moving pieces here, and you have to take everything into account in order to really capture the impact and the value that you're looking for.
Okay.
And last but not least, it's also a question of mindset. So
I can elaborate on that one.
Go ahead.
I faced recently a situation like this where if you use a consultant, you can speed up your savings program by 3 months. And at the end of the day, it's a savings program that can yield something like 10 million of savings per year. So using some external support to accelerate things will bring you an extra, by 1 quarter, will give you an extra 2.5 million. But you will have to explain that you're working with consultants, and consultants are not well seen, or they are not popular because they spend a lot of time here because there was a merger and blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the day, the choice of the executive might be to say, okay, I'll take my time, I'll go there. Maybe I will not go that high, maybe it will be slower, but I do it by myself. So at the end of the day, it's seen as positive because I'm the man and I work by myself and I don't work with consultants, whereas indeed we leave 2.5 million on the table, but nobody knows it. The second one is indeed when in some cases you don't know the market, you really, really want the project to succeed. So you end up taking a tier 1 consultant on a project that maybe could have been done by a tier 2 or tier 3 consultant. And then you have secured that you have the brand, you have secured that nobody will blame you for trying to use the best consultant or the best reputation in the world. But it comes at a premium. And sometimes you just have 500K on you for a project and you end up with a proposal that's at 1 million. And that's the premium you have to pay for the luxury of working with those that are labeled as the best. And the last point that we have on that page is clear, is that we see so many situations where the business lines, finance and procurement don't really work as a team when buying consulting. And you will have the business line kind of negotiating everything on one side and coming to procurement just asking to negotiate a rebate. Or you will have a too strong involvement of procurement that will say, here are the only 2 guys you can work with. And the fact that those teams are not working as an efficient multifunctional team is damaging the outputs. And all in all, when we step back, we can confirm what we were saying in the first place, which is that consulting is in many, many cases not managed as an investment. Because in an investment, you would have your multifunctional team, for instance.
So I wanted just to do a kind of a little snapshot of what we've seen in the survey. We launched a survey this summer, and to see where companies stand on their consulting sourcing maturity. And what we saw is that a lot of companies are not even using some basics tools that really could make a difference in the way they manage consulting. For instance, they don't use demand management. They don't analyze their spend because they don't know how much they're spending. If you ask them, they will just say, I don't know that. I need to check because the budget are scattered and the users internally are just doing their thing, and procurement is just at the end trying to take care of the PO. And the last part also is that consultants are often selected on existing relationships only. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's a bad thing all in all. I'm just saying that having this as the only criteria to bring on a consulting is not right. And we go back to Laurent. What Laurent was saying is that at the end, what you want is the best consultant for your project. And it can be a tier one company, it can be a consultant that you have already worked with, or it can be a new company that you never heard of. And the problem is, you have to ask yourself those questions and put yourself in a position where you always are working with the best option based on your needs and your budget. So this is always what we're looking for. So you need to think about impact on value and ROI and cost all on one, and not just one of those dimensions. So what's the solution? So this is the kind of the result of our work. We'll go very fast on those 6 levers, and then we'll go one by one after that. So we see that there are 6 levers to maximize your ROIs of your consulting spend. And I'll start with the first one, which is invest in the right project. We talked about that already. That's one thing. Then we have set up the right delivery model. So by delivery model, what we mean is how you organize your teams, whether they're working with external consultants, internal consultants, all of this. So this is what we talk about. Secure the impact of your project. Make sure the project you launch deliver the value or the impact that you expect. Buy better, keep your costs under control. It's not only on the beginning where you're securing the purchase of the consulting services, it's also after the contract and the SOW is signed, making sure that you keep your costs under control. We've seen projects that go completely off track because nobody was following anything or tracing the changes. And at the end, the vision of the consulting and the client were completely different. And there was a huge conflict in order to settle the invoices and the payments. So, and you don't want that. You want to make sure that even if you go over the price, then it's because it was decided together with the consultant that was the right option. Then partner with your consulting suppliers and make sure that you build a relationship with them. And finally, all of those levers are great, but the real goal is to make sure that whatever you decide to do is going to stay on the long run. All right. So these are the 6 levers. Do you want to add something on that, Laurent?
Nope.
No? Okay.
No.
So now we're going to, so bear with me because that's my first time I use it, right? We're going to try a little thing. So that's a poll. Can you answer the following question? Can you see the poll, guys? Yes. I can see people are voting. All right. Right. So the idea is, on which level do you think your organization is the most mature? Well, that's cool.
We have 5 answers.
Yes.
Give it another minute. Yeah.
Well, in a couple of seconds.
Let's try to reach 10.
Yeah. Well, I know there are more than 10 people that are here. So
yeah.
I was hoping to get there.
It's pretty balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one to see the intermediate results.
No, yeah. Come on, one more. Done. Okay, so I'm going to show the results. All right, so what we see here is quite balanced, actually. So that's very interesting. The only thing where nobody is mature is securing the impact of your project. So I think there's something here. However, we see something here that we've seen in the survey in last summer, is that the part where companies are more comfortable with or more familiar with is the part that is in control of procurement, mainly, which is buy better, keep your costs under control, and partner with your consulting suppliers. That's where we also saw the highest maturity over the summer survey. But we still have companies that have maturity as well and invest in the right project and select the right delivery model. So that's very interesting. So thank you guys for participating. Let's move on to the 6 levels in particular. So we won't go over all the slides in detail. We wrote that mainly because we know that you have access to those slides and you can take them and have them with you afterwards to review what has been said. But invest in the right projects. This is probably where we see a lot of immaturity in companies. We see companies that have built a strategy for how to use consulting, but is not necessarily applying the said strategy. So that's one thing. But the idea here is very simple. Is you need to make sure that the project you launch fall into one of the 3 categories. One is it's a project that is strategic and will get us where we want as a company. That's one thing. Second thing is what we call enablers, which are projects that are not per se strategic, but that are enabling projects that are strategic. So that's another category. And the third category is that project that may not be strategic, but they have a high return on investment. So it makes sense to launch them, get the return, and then you can either improve your bottom line or decide to reinvest that money into other strategic projects that you couldn't launch because of budget restrictions. So these are the things that you need to do. And then once you've done that, then you need to make sure that it is actually implemented. And that's why we talk about demand management. So on one side, defining your strategy for consulting, and second, making sure that that strategy is indeed implemented.
And it's I saw it implemented not on consulting, but on excellence resources in my time with Solvay, for instance. And that was extremely powerful. Just looking at the return on investment on the various projects that we had in the portfolio, we realized that we were spending a pretty equal amount of budget per function, whereas some functions had immediate returns and some functions had kind of hypothetical returns. And we probably would be better off, even though the function in question were not super happy, we would be probably better off doubling down on some manufacturing projects and reducing some enabling projects that were maybe improving a little bit some engagement and so on, but that did not have the expected returns.
So let's move to the second.
I can pick up that one if you want, Helene, to give you a grid. I think what's written here is clear that there are 50 ways to deliver a project. I will not make the Simon and Garfunkel song when I speak about this page, but some projects require consultants. Some could be done or should be done internally because they are too confidential and you want to keep that close to the vest. Sometimes just pushing to have some internal resources in the project will at the same time grow your teams because they will work with the consultant, but also reduce your bills because this way you don't pay for the juniors at $3,000 bucks a day. And last but not least, the consulting is in mutation. And we have seen over the last 10 years a lot of market research firms that were previously catering to the large consulting firms that are now proposing their services directly. So you end up buying for $75,000 a project, a market research project that you would have bought for $250 from a consulting firm. You have expert marketplaces that allow you to have interviews. You want to dive on a given topic. For marketing, for instance, you interview 5 guys that are experts on the matter, and for maybe $1,000 per interview, for $5,000, you have pretty much the opinion from the key opinion leaders on the market. You have consulting marketplace to supplement your teams, or also to run small projects, and you can compensate with temporary workforce for a lot of lack of resources. So something to be kept under control to avoid having a lot of leakage in this area, but definitely something that allows to, once you have decided to run a project, find what's the right delivery model and what's the right way to deliver it. Because using consultants to do everything might not be the right option.
And I think what is important here is to think about all those options as a company, which are the ones that we want to use and we make available for our teams, and give them the tools to make those decisions once a project is launched. So it's kind of a two-layer thing to do. So next thing is securing the impact of a project. So what we're talking about here is making sure that your projects deliver, and you have to keep in mind that there's always a trade-off between impact and cost. You know, when consultants build their proposal, they look at, you know, the scope of the work. They look at the goals that be to achieve, and then they deliver a cost linked to that. If you decrease the cost, the risk you're taking is that the impact will be reduced because the consultant will reduce the scope as well. So there is a very strong link between scope and impact and cost. So this is very important to always keep that in mind when you work on projects. So one of the things that is interesting in that you have to involve procurement in early stages. And I know a lot of companies don't do that because they think, well, it's our thing, it's consulting. What do procurement bring to the table? What do they bring to the table? But actually, they can guide you because it might be surprising, I know, but their job is to help you buy stuff. That's kind of they're pretty much what they do day in, day out. They negotiate. They know how to challenge, how to ask the questions. And one of the questions that they can ask are about the requirements. Make sure that when you write an RFP or you write your requirements, whatever solution you work with, you focus on the must-have and you leave the nice-to-have on the side, unless you have unlimited budget. I'm not sure that many of us are in this situation right now, but this is where having someone who is used to write RFPs and ask those questions candidly, do you really need this? What is the solution that you're looking for? And help you not only write those RFPs, but also define what is the profile of the consulting firm you need for that. So this kind of two things where working on RFP that is really focused on the must-have, working with a consulting firm that has the right profile. And when we say profile, it's about capabilities, so what type of consulting they can do, what industry experience they have, but also things that are a little more, fuzzy, such as, what is the political weight that you're looking for? So let me give you an example that when you have a project that have board exposure and you know that we will use the result for your investors, this type of project, you cannot really work with just the first consulting firm that you or the one guy that is a freelancer doing that. That's not how you do that. You will have to work with a company that has a well-known brand, that is recognized, and so on. So that's typically the type of situation when you would work with a tier one consulting firm. Why? Because they have that political value that they bring to the table. When consultants work, they bring not only the knowledge and the experience, but they also have that political experience and that political weight that they can bring to the table. And that has value as well. And that has to be taken into account when you decide what consulting firm you want to work with. Another point is to align, everyone at the table to make sure that you agree on the expectation before you start the project. So that's also very important, because that's one of the main reasons of failure of consulting projects, is that the consultants and the clients don't agree on what is to be delivered. And that's really a key for success. So that being said, everything is started, you are aligned, and you started your project. You have to manage it. And I think that we've heard that, we've seen cases where internally the company was not even assigning a project manager for managing a project, meaning that the consultants not only had, I'd say, carte blanche. I wouldn't say that in a could see that negative, but also they didn't have anyone to kind of connect with and challenge and ask questions to make sure that they were going in the right direction.
It's project management. It's also governance, and also making sure that it's clear. We are clear, and it might change depending on the topic, but we need to know who is driving the bus. Because at the end of the day, the outcomes will stay with the company, and the consultant will go and do something else. And when I was in consulting, I used to say the clients have the strategy they deserve. Because if a client is not managing properly the project, then they will get a crap result, and they cannot only blame the consultant for that.
Yeah. And so two other elements, and we'll go fast on that. It's consider creative compensation fees, such as value sharing. And one last thing, we almost never talk about that. When you provide feedback at the end of a project to one of your suppliers, especially those that are your strategic or preferred suppliers, you're building up on the long run. You're kind of making sure that next time they work for you, they'll do better. That's also how you improve the impact and the ROI of a project, not only on the instant, but also on the long run with those suppliers that you work with on a regular basis. So buy better. I think this is pretty standard. I won't say anything that you will not discover anything here. It's professionalize your teams for consulting. Make sure they know what consulting is, how that works, what are the specificities. Implement competition whenever it's possible and whenever it's relevant. And in my experience, it's relevant and necessary in many more cases than you might think. So that's very important. Even if you don't launch a competition, still define your requirements, because that's how you make sure that what you want, your expectations are clear to the consultants, and they know exactly what you expect from them. And that means having deliverables, and that means also having acceptance criteria. And then you have also how to prepare your negotiations in the right way to understand what you can do and not do. And the last thing we wrote was about choosing your fee structure carefully. Here, it really comes from our experience in the last 9 years, is that we've seen cases where the client chose fee structures that were not well fit to the projects that they launched, or that were not structured or designed in the right way, and then the fees exploded. And I'm specifically thinking of two things. One is one project where they used daily fees, and without flat fee, just daily fee and then a number of hours, but they did not define any soft or hard cap. And worse than that, they did not trace the change in the scope. At the end of the day, the consultant worked much more than expected, and the client wanted just to go back to the first estimation. Yeah. And that was a huge conflict. But there's another case where one of our clients had put in place a performance-based bonus, but at no point they decided on the criteria, on the metrics, and at no point they evaluated the results. So they were in a situation where the consultants just had no way to assess how good they did. And so instead of, going in the discussion, everybody stayed quiet and the consultant just invoiced the full fees, including the performance-based bonus. But what you see here is that indeed it was a little bit a push from the consultant, but neither procurement nor the client did anything to make sure that fee structure was handled and managed correctly. And so this kind of a 50-50, I would say 70 30 actually problem. So that's very important. If you decide on a specific fee structure, then you have to follow up. You have to go there and make sure that until the end of the project, you implement and you manage as it should.
But if I had just one guidance to give, we stay away as much as possible from the pay-as-you-go.
Yeah.
Agree on a flat rate for a given set of deliverables and then manage the changes. But the pay-as-you-go is the legal model. It doesn't really fit the consulting one.
Mm-hmm. Even in legal, we don't always agree with things like that, right? So partner with your suppliers. Of course, this is about supplier relationship management. This is category management. This is about building relationship with your strategic consultants. Indeed, it's hard to see all of them. Some companies have more than 100 consultants working with them, consulting firms working with them. And so it's really hard to dedicate a lot of time to everyone. But it's still important to know who are your strategic suppliers. And I'm not saying the one you spend the most money with, right? That's the one who are more strategic, that are more, that will advance your strategy, that you absolutely need to move to the next level. And that can be a small consulting firm with a very unique skill. It's really not only about, how much you spend with it. But what is important is not only to have a list of suppliers, preferred suppliers, which is a first step. And for that, you can analyze your spend, see who is spending on what, and etc. You measure the performance of your suppliers to make sure that the ones that are on your list are good and you're satisfied with their work. But you also need to look forward and look at what are your needs in the future, so you can start building that relationship with those suppliers. Because there's one thing that's true, is that when you're able to build that intimacy with your suppliers and consulting suppliers, then the project can start much faster. Why? Because you are able to implement MSAs and you have already pre-negotiated some of the terms and conditions for the project, and therefore the sourcing process goes faster. That's one thing. But the other thing is also that they get started faster because they know you. They know you, they know what you've done, they know your culture, they know the people in the organization, and therefore the starting part of your project that can last 1 week, 1 week and a half, and they gather information and then you have a kickoff. That part can be reduced because they already know you. That's like a little bit like their plug and play, if you will. So working within a consultant that is not always a bad thing. What is important is that not only do you know them, but they're right for the project. And you have to make sure that you have healthy competition. You have a dynamic list of preferred providers. You take out the bad ones. You're on board the new ones that fit your needs, and you work with them. You implement performance reviews. You have improvement plan, etc., etc. Right? So this kind of everything with those suppliers will help you get better and build that relationship with them. And then at the end, it will benefit not only procurement as a group, as working better and getting better prices and getting rebates and so on, but also your end users, your internal stakeholders that will able to work with consultants that are good at what they do and that are getting very quickly in their projects. And so the last thing is making sure that the change stick. So I said that at the beginning, is that here, when you want to improve your ROI, you want to do that on the long run. And it means a change in the ways of working. And so it has to start with, where am I? And then decide where you want to go, and then define, the path in between. And it cannot happen if you're not able to embark your top management in the journey. And so that's if you have only one thing to do in that slide, that would be that one. It's don't think that you can launch a company-wide transformation, because that's what is going to be if we talk about consulting. Even if not everyone in the company will be impacted, everywhere in the company there will be people impacted by that. So this is super important. But also, if you want people to change their ways, you need to make the change easier. You need to make their new life easier. So it means making sure you describe the new processes, you describe how you will implement demand management. That's one thing. But then also give them a toolbox. Agree to do a make or buy analysis, a tool to take care of demand management, everything that can help them, guidelines, handbooks, everything that can help them to know what are the different steps and what they're supposed to do at the different steps. And it can have to be done through training of your procurement business lines, or maybe coaching, whatever is most adapted to your organization. And then there's one thing that now we have access to that and can be really giving you kind of extra boost. It's digital. So digital platform today are giving you two things that are super important. The first thing is that it can give you instantly visibility on what's happening on the consulting side without changing that much how you do things. Because that's the beauty of that you, even if you have, you are a very decentralized company, you can keep a decentralized organization, but then you will have the overview of what's happening. And that's how you can start building and start designing what could be the path for improvement. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is that a lot of those platforms are quite flexible. And so you can use them on the long run, and they can help you grow, right? And so you start with a very disorganized, decentralized thing, and then step by step, you will get to a more mature consulting procurement capability, and those platforms often offer that flexibility. Laurent, you wanted to add something?
Well, that's that's the philosophy we use when we're designing our own platform. Mm-hmm. We said we want to be able to do everything in the wrong way, because we want to be flexible and to enter at any step of the process. And if some people want to skip the RFP, they skip the RFP. If they want to skip the SOW, they can even skip the SOW. But then we have a KPI at the end that tells you how far you are from the best practices. And that's the only thing we tell you. We say, okay, you're pretty far away, but you can use the platform and and kind of progressively get there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that being said, we went on over the 6 levers, and so now that you know everything, we're going to do the second. Oh shoot! It's already being launched.
It's already been launched.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's move on. Anyway, we're a little bit late, so let's go there. So, what are the results that you can expect? Laurent, can you?
Sorry, I was looking at the poll.
No, sorry. Go ahead. That's.
No, but I'm back. Yeah. So looking at the results, as we are looking at the impact and the consulting spend by kind of working better on all the levels that Helene was mentioning, what we have seen working with our clients is an increase of, I would say, at least on average, 15 to 20% increase on the impact, which is pretty significant. But it's an impact kind of overall by focusing on the project that will yield the most benefits. It's also by better managing the projects. It's also by using consulting when it makes sense. So it's a combination of all this. I'm not saying that we can drive 15% of each and every project. And then the cost, by just reducing the project that should not be there and combining that with healthy competition and design to cost to make sure that you buy what you need and only what you need, you can drive, I wouldn't say fairly easily, but without too much pain, 30 to 40% cost reduction. So when you combine that on the numerator and the denominator of our earlier equation, this drives 25 to 50% average ROI uplift. which can be huge. Yeah, because the ROI for consulting is sometimes 4 to 10 times the amount you're spending in consulting. So take it on a 100 million invested in consulting should yield 300 to 400 million in returns. If you get a 50% increase in your ROI, you end up at 600. So that those can be very, very massive numbers for companies.
But there are other things that we can expect to that. It's in we talk a lot about ROI, of course, as the webinar is about how to maximize the ROI of your consulting spend, but there are other benefits to implementing such a methodology, and one of these benefits are in collaboration. And it's collaboration with the business lines for procurement, but it's also a better relationship with your consultants. Because believe it or not, but consultants like to know where they put their feet. They like to know your expectations, and they like to make sure that you're happy, and that at the end of a project you have reached the impact that you wanted. And they're also very interested in getting feedback and guidelines and pointers to improve and work better with you. So that's extremely important. And so you have consultants that are happy and they know what to expect, so it's clear for them. You give them visibility because you have a list of preferred suppliers, so you get better prices, you have better impact, they're more committed to your project. You have end users that are happier because their consultants are good, their projects deliver, and they're clear on what is expected, and they're clear on how to go from a need to a project. And you have also procurement that is involved earlier in the project, that have more visibility on what's happening and can really bring value, not only on the transactional part of procurement for consulting, which is most of the time negotiation, but also on the early stages. And then you have a leadership team that can see strategy being accelerated and, returns and value creation that is increased. So all in all, it's not only about ROI, it's also about getting better results, getting better value, better relationship, all in all. So that was what to expect from such a from implementing those levers. So we're almost at the end. But we wanted to say one thing, and that's extremely important. So one thing is that there is no one-fits-all, no cookie-cutter solution. You can only start with where you are. And more than that, not all of you need to get to the same level. When we built the maturity grid, we created 4 levels, and the 4th one is best in class. And indeed, very large companies that have massive consulting spend should aim for a best in class. But that's not necessarily true for a smaller company. What is important is to make sure that you know where you stand and you identify where you want to go and where are the areas for improvement. And that's how you build your plan, and then you start implementing it. And all of this has to be customized to you, your culture, your organization, but also your existing procurement practices and your level of maturity for procurement in general. Because you cannot create some sort of a work here for consulting and then everything else is not as mature or not done. Mm-hmm. It's done a completely different way. So you have to kind of make sure that everything works together.
Makes sense.
And then ultimately, these are the elements that I mentioned before. We have a few tools that you can use to get started and to inform yourself. Don't hesitate to also ask questions. We will have a few minutes that we can answer specific question here. We have a consulting procurement maturity survey that we can give you. It's a 10-question survey. And at the end of the survey, we'll present you your customized results. Some of you here that are in the call have had their presentation already. Feel free to share if you think that really bringing value. We are trying to identify some recommendation to get you started, but also to give you a sense of where the other respondents are compared to you, and to give you a sense of, am I doing better, am I doing worse than others? So that's one thing. The other thing that
we have close to 100 answers now, so we start to be able to do that even by industry. And, that's pretty neat.
We have monthly roundtables where we have between 7 to 10 attendees, and we can go a little bit deeper and a more customized approach to that. We want to organize that per industry in the future, but we started a few weeks ago, so we don't have yet the right pace to organize that. But the idea is to get with other executive from the finance and procurement space, and to talk about your challenges and the solution that you've tried to implement and your success, and then see together how we can what are the other options that we could go to. We have an insight that we wrote on consulting procurement maturity. It's available on our website, and of course we have a podcast that is out again on our website. Don't hesitate, if you want to have the links to one or more of those, don't hesitate to drop your name in the chat, and we'll make sure that you have that information right away. And now that was the end of the presentation. Do you have any questions, anything that you want to have more details on?
You can use the chat, you can use the questions. I don't know how you ask a question, because I just see it from the trainer side, but do not hesitate. Otherwise, we are close to the end of the 1 hour, so maybe people have to go.
That's okay. So I think you have my email anyway, so if you have specific questions about the session, maybe you need to kind of digest everything we say. Well, it's pretty dense webinar. Don't hesitate to ask us directly, and we'll make sure to answer those emails. Thank you for everyone for being here. Thank you, Laurent.
I have one question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
What is the topic of the next webinar?
That's what I was about to go to. So our West webinar will be in March, and we'll talk about digitalization of procurement. What about consulting? We're working on securing a couple of guest speakers. I can't say yet who will be there because we're still in discussions, but that will be a not a roundtable, but like the history of consulting, the last webinar we did. That's going to be something a little bit more interactive. That's it. Thank you to you all. That's exactly the right time. We can stop at exactly on time. Thank you all. Don't hesitate to connect. If you have questions or just want to chat about procurement, it's always a pleasure. And bonne soirée then, right?
Voilà.
Goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.